It's 4:22 a.m. on November 3rd. In the dark waters north of Venezuela, the US destroyer USS Barry is cutting through calm seas when everything changes in one breath. A bright flash tears across the surface as an AGM-84 harpoon leaves its launcher, racing just feet above the water. From the bridge, the crew hears the hard, rising tone that means only one thing. A hostile launch has been confirmed. No one speaks. They watch the incoming symbol on the screen grow brighter, closer, faster. Far ahead, the Venezuelan cargo ship El Libertador keeps its course, unaware that its last move has triggered a response it cannot outrun. The ship looks harmless from a distance, just another freighter on a quiet route. But inside, hidden equipment has already changed this night forever. The harpoon keeps closing in, its engine screaming low over the waves. 20 seconds to impact. 15, 10. The destroyer's captain has seconds to choose. Hold, fire back, or turn into a maneuver that might rip the ship apart. And in that moment, the whole Caribbean seems to stop and wait. What happened that night was more than a missile scare. It mattered because the waters north of Venezuela are among the busiest shipping lanes in the Caribbean. Tankers, cargo ships, and patrols move through constantly, and one wrong move can ripple across borders fast. For the crew of the USS Barry, this wasn't just another patrol. In international waters, every decision represents the country, and any mistake could spark a crisis. El Libertador looked like a normal freighter, but intelligence showed it left port after a late-night briefing with foreign advisors, and its movements were too sharp for a merchant vessel. Analysts suspected hidden systems. Still, suspicion isn't proof, and as long as it stayed in open waters, the US had no reason to act unless a threat became real. That is what made the moment so tense. A sudden radar lock, a burst of interference, a maneuver that felt more like preparation than fear. For sailors staring at screens before sunrise, those signals can feel like warnings you cannot ignore. In training, everything is simple. In real life, it becomes a maze of fast decisions. For Venezuela, the stakes were high. The mission called Bolivarian Route 2025 was meant to prove they could move sensitive cargo without detection. To their leaders, it was a show of independence. To the crew, it was pressure. Prove the route, prove the systems, stand firm against a stronger navy. Pride and fear can twist judgment quickly. This is why the incident mattered. A destroyer facing a ship acting like it had something to hide. A captain thinking he was being targeted before any shot was fired. Two sides locked in a moment where one wrong interpretation could ignite something far bigger. If you were tracking this tension on radar, would you press 1 or 9? The first sign of trouble came as a sharp shift on the USS Barry's radar. A soft echo from the Venezuelan freighter suddenly tightened into a hard return, the kind that means someone just powered up equipment they should not have. The technician on duty called it out, her voice steady but tense. A second later, interference hit the radar feed. Not enough to blind it, but enough to show intent. Cargo ships don't create interference like that. The captain ordered a warning call. The radio operator sent a clear message, then another. No reply. Instead, a burst of static slammed through the speakers, so loud it made the radio crew flinch. It wasn't weather. It was a jam. That was the moment the Barry shifted into battle readiness. Below deck, sailors locked down consoles and watched status lights flip from green to red. The freighter on their screen changed color too. It turned orange. Possible threat. Up above, a P-8 Poseidon watching from altitude caught something the Barry couldn't see. A small hatch on El Libertador opened near midship. At night, it was almost invisible, but the infrared feed picked it up perfectly. The operator on the aircraft didn't have to guess. Launcher exposed, he reported. The image appeared on the Barry screen 3 seconds later. The captain didn't wait. All hands, brace for possible launch. Then it happened. A thin streak of heat shot from the freighter, skimming the surface before leveling out. The missile moved too fast and too clean to be anything but intentional. Missile launch! Someone shouted from the combat center. Alarms hit instantly. The destroyer rolled hard as the captain threw it into a turn. Chaff burst behind them, spraying metal clouds into the air. The electronic warfare suite pushed out signal after signal, trying to break the missile's lock. The missile closed the gap fast. 20 seconds, 15, 10. The Barry's hull groaned under the strain as engines pushed for every knot. Waves slammed against the bow as the destroyer cut across its own wake. Sailors held onto rails, feeling the ship tremble under the maneuver. The missile overshot by a razor-thin margin, detonating behind the ship in a white flash that turned the dark water bright as day. The shock rattled the rear deck, knocking 2 sailors down, but the Barry was still alive. The captain steadied himself, then gave the order no one wanted to hear but everyone expected. Prepare counterstrike. If you were watching that missile slice past your ship, would you press 1 for the Barry's next move or 9 for the freighter's fate? The Barry did not wait for a second attack. The moment the missile exploded behind the ship, the destroyer shifted into full combat mode. The captain ordered an immediate lock on the freighter, and the combat center snapped into motion. Screens refreshed, targeting lines sharpened, and El Libertador's signal pulsed brighter with every second. The hidden launcher on the cargo ship was still exposed, still smoking, still proving this was no mistake. For a brief moment, the Barry steadied its course. The fire control system needed only a few seconds of stable movement to track the target. On deck, the harpoon launcher adjusted in tiny steps, locked in on the freighter through the dark waves. Inside the ship, the room grew quiet. Everyone understood what came next. Up above, the P-8 Poseidon confirmed the freighter was not surrendering. Its crew moved in panic across the deck, some trying to close the launcher, some trying to shield themselves, none able to undo what had already been done. The Poseidon transmitted the latest coordinates straight to the Barry. With that data, the destroyer had everything it needed. "Target locked," the weapons officer said. The captain nodded once. The harpoon launched, blasting into the night with a low, rising roar. It leveled just above the water and began its run toward the freighter. On El Libertador, alarms finally screamed. The ship tried to turn, but a merchant hull cannot pivot fast. The bow dragged across the waves, slow and heavy, leaving a crooked wake. The missile adjusted instantly, dropping even lower, closing the distance in seconds. The harpoon struck midship with a hard blast that lit the night in white and orange. Fire tore through the cargo hold. A second internal explosion followed as containers ruptured. The freighter began to list almost immediately, smoke pouring from the wound. Men jumped to the rails, some calling for help, some frozen in shock. Even with the ship crippled, the Barry did not relax. The captain ordered full scans for any second launcher or hidden threat. The crew stayed locked in, eyes fixed on every signal, waiting for the ocean to reveal its next move. The night was far from over. If you felt this moment tightening like a wire, would you press 1 for the Barry's next step or 9 for Venezuela's response? The harpoon strike should have ended the danger. A cargo ship hit that hard usually goes silent fast, but as El Libertador dipped toward the water, something unexpected happened. A second heat signature blinked on the Poseidon screen. It wasn't another missile launch, but a short burst of electronic noise coming from inside the sinking ship. It was quick, only a second long, but strong enough to catch every sensor watching the area. Down on the Barry, the combat center froze. Systems flagged the signal as unfamiliar. It wasn't communication, and it wasn't radar. It looked more like a trigger, something designed to activate before the ship went under. "Possible secondary system," the technician reported. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room. When a ship already hiding weapons fires off a mystery signal, no one assumes the best. The captain ordered the destroyer to hold position and maintain distance. The freighter was sinking, but slowly enough that parts of the deck were still visible. Smoke poured out in thick waves. The Poseidon moved lower, trying to see through the heat and debris. Then the twist became clear. Inside one of the damaged containers, a second launcher had been welded into place, half submerged now, bent from the explosion. It looked like it had been prepared for use later in the mission, possibly against a different target. The crew on the Barry felt the weight of that discovery. If the first missile had hit its mark, The second launcher might have stayed hidden long enough to be moved somewhere else, maybe even into a port. The freighter wasn't just carrying weapons, it was part of a larger plan, a moving piece in a route designed to test how far they could go without being stopped. Water reached the freighter's deck, tilting it more to one side. Metal groaned as the hull began to fold. The mystery signal didn't repeat. Whatever it was meant for either failed or came too late. Still, everyone watching knew it changed the story. This wasn't a reckless captain firing on impulse. This was a mission built on layers, each one meant to hide the next. And the night had just revealed a layer no one expected. If you were the one monitoring that strange signal, would you press 1 to dig deeper, or 9 to shut it down and move on? The ocean fell into a strange calm as El Libertador kept sinking. But no one on the Berry believed the danger was over. The discovery of a second launcher changed the whole picture. The captain ordered a wider circle around the freighter while sensors swept the water again. Above them, the Poseidon lowered altitude, pushing through smoke, drifting off the damaged ship. Then a new alert sounded. Not a missile. Something smaller. Something drifting. A metal object slipped from the freighter's side and dropped into the water. At first, it looked like debris. Then sonar spoke up. Possible drone. No engine sound. Moving with current. The technician stayed steady, but everyone felt tension rise again. A drifting drone can carry anything, and no one was taking chances after what the ship already revealed. The Berry tightened its arc, keeping distance. The drone floated out from the wreck, half broken, lights flickering. It didn't move toward the destroyer, but the thermal image was wrong, too focused to be harmless. The Poseidon operator confirmed it. Internal heat source detected. Could be a charge. The captain didn't wait. Forward gun. Stand by. The small caliber cannon shifted toward the object. For a moment, the whole ship held its breath. Then came the order. Engage! The gunner fired a short burst. Water splashed around the drone. Then the round struck it directly. A flash erupted on the surface, tight and violent. Even from a safe distance, the Berry felt the jolt ripple through the hull. When the blast faded, the freighter finally broke apart. A deep metallic groan rolled across the water as it slipped under completely. Smoke thinned. The Poseidon circled one last time. No more signals. No more heat. Area stable. Only then did the Berry slow down, letting the sea settle. What should have been a simple night patrol had turned into a full-scale confrontation with a disguised vessel carrying hidden weapon systems. The missile launch was not an accident. The drone was not an accident. None of it was chance. The freighter was built for something bigger. Something meant to test how far a ship could go before anyone stopped it. As the last pieces of debris drifted away, one question hung over the crew. If this ship carried 2 hidden systems, how many others were already moving through the Caribbean with the same purpose? And if you were standing on that bridge, watching the ocean close over the wreck, would you press 1 to tighten the patrols, or 9 to prepare for something even larger? When daylight reached the horizon, the Berry stayed on station, watching the last pieces of El Libertador drift across the water. Rescue teams pulled 25 survivors from the sea. Most were silent, trembling from shock, and their captain insisted the destroyer had locked onto him first. But every log and infrared frame showed the truth. The freighter activated hidden systems long before the Berry raised its defenses. As the report moved up the chain of command, the bigger picture appeared. This wasn't a random cargo ship with a rogue launcher. It was part of a route meant to test how far disguised vessels could move without being challenged. Intelligence teams compared weeks of satellite data, port departures, and sudden course shifts. The pattern was worrying. If even a few similar ships were active, patrols across the Caribbean would need to tighten fast. For the U.S. Navy, the lesson was immediate. One disguised freighter forced a destroyer into a defensive turn, triggered a missile launch, and nearly pushed 2 countries toward crisis. International patrols would no longer treat suspicious cargo ships as low risk. Rules of engagement would shift. Surveillance flights would rise. Every radar contact would be checked twice. In Venezuela, fallout spread quickly. Ports tied to the mission were scrutinized. Advisors who met the crew vanished from official channels. Diplomatic messages claimed misunderstanding. But a ship carrying 2 hidden launchers and a drifting drone was not a misunderstanding, it was planning. Back on the Barry, the crew stepped away from their stations only when a second destroyer arrived. Exhaustion settled in. Some sailors stared at the water, replaying the moment the missile streaked past the hull. Others whispered the same question. If this freighter hid weapons so well, how many more were already moving through the region? As the Barry turned away, the captain gave one last order. Log everything. This is only the beginning. And he was right. The Caribbean had changed, and the next vessel might not wait to show its intentions.